Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's discussion. I'm Kim Turner, and I'm delighted to be hosting my colleague, Bill Truettner. As a part of our series about moving great ideas into execution, Bill will discuss best practices for ensuring that valuable ideas from your crowdsourced innovation efforts advance to funded projects ready for execution. Bill will share a four-step approach to concept development to guide you in building an effective pitch for your project, and he will share tips and techniques that you can adopt for each step along the way. Before we dive in, I'll share a little bit about us to provide some context. Spigit enables organizations to engage employees in ideation, to create and manage a pipeline of ideas. These ideas translate into initiatives that can drive new business strategies, new product development, and operational efficiencies. Spigit enables business leaders to find the best ideas and to foster a culture of innovation. As the largest provider of idea management solutions, we have the privilege of serving some of the world's foremost and recognizable organizations. And as such, we've launched more than 14,000 challenges across many industries and geographies. This translates into a level of expertise that is highly valued by our customers. Our innovation strategists, such as Bill, work hand in glove with our clients to ensure their program success and bring to bear experiences across companies and industries. I'm delighted to introduce Bill so that he can share his insights today. And on that note, I'll turn it over to Bill.
Thank you, Kim, and hello, everyone. All right, so I'm going to move right into our content here and hope that as it raises questions in your mind, you'll add them into the chat section. It's a great pleasure to talk with you on this topic, that is ideas getting stuck in organizations, if you will, and how to get them unstuck. The particular method I'll be talking about is specifically designed for small group interactions. So just want to make sure you have that context as we move through. So why are we even focused on this? It probably would look familiar to those of you, especially working in large organizations, as we go to try to move ideas forward. The most frequent challenge that we hear from our customers is that's a hard thing to do. And it may be because resources are hard to get. It may be because ideas are not well formed or any of the other reasons that you see here. And so our premise is, what can we do to move ideas forward and break down these barriers? The method I'll be introducing is concept development in a live workshop setting and or online in an online platform such as Spigit. And it's really designed to break down all those walls, to take the idea and put it in motion in the organization and achieve the innovation that we intend to achieve. What we'll find is that by developing the idea, or this idea of concept development, we can go make a pitch for resources that will be well received and free up resources. We can take an idea from maybe an early state where it's a concept or a fragment or a not well formed or developed idea into something that's much more well formed that a resource manager can look at and make a decision about. We also make a lot of progress by working on the ideas, on understanding the problems behind them and figuring out which parts of the problems we want to approach or solve. Many times problems in big organizations are complex, and so it's useful to figure out what part of the problem we want to work on. As a result of those activities, we're instilling process. We're helping to change culture one step at a time and one small group at a time. And we're improving the communication between teams and sharing and learning, which of course is a essential part of culture of innovation. Okay, so let's move now actually at this point into a polling question, get a little feedback from the audience. So you should see the question on screen, and you can select one of the following results. What is the biggest barrier to moving winning ideas forward? Very interesting and probably not that surprising. So 47% risk averse culture. It is, we are all human beings working together, and we're going to talk a little bit about collaboration today. So that really doesn't surprise me that much. Resource constraints being number two, and that's sort of the practical side of the equation. So it actually raises an interesting angle on this whole topic, which is the method that I'm going to be walking you through is really designed for small groups, and it's designed to get those groups collaborating together and leverage their implicit and tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge to solve the problem or to move forward on the idea. So it's actually this method is actually very focused on collaboration and the cultural dimension, recognizing that we have really smart people working with us, and it may be just a matter of getting them together and we can figure out a strong path forward so that we can put that argument in front of the resource managers and overcome the resource constraints. So why are we such a big fan? At Spigit, our point of view is collaboration does work, and here's one study that demonstrates the ability to collaborate in networks is more important than raw talent to innovativeness, and a wonderful visual there of collaboration happening live. A lot of the method that I'm introducing relies on collaboration. The premise is that none of us is smarter than all of us. And so it really is driving the collaboration among experts together to get the result. One more proof point on collaboration, just in case you need to be convinced. This is a study that was done by the Corporate Executive Board. And in a 10-year span, they found that the increase in network ability to achieve organizational outcomes significantly overshadowed the ability of individuals to achieve organizational outcomes. So it sort of intuitively makes sense to most of us, especially in your daily experience. But there again, the other study I could show you is collaboration is not necessarily easy. And actually organizations find collaboration difficult. So what can we do about that? And now we'll focus on our methods. So what we have is an approach here that starts with an idea, and we'll define that for now, or a concept even, as something new that adds value. So we've all had this experience. Someone voices an idea or a concept, you intuitively can see that there's absolute value there, that it's compelling, it's something that should be pursued. The question is how? And so the method I'm proposing would add the 5 steps that you see in the middle. Let's first understand, maybe call it backcasting, if you will. Let's understand the context around that thought or around that idea, around that concept. Where did it come from? What is the surround around it? And we're back to the quote from Einstein that says, if I want to solve a problem, I'll spend 59 minutes understanding it and 1 minute solving it. I think that's a lot of the power here in this approach. The next step is solution and benefit, and this is what we all think about with problem solving. What are the ideas? What can we do? And how would it be of benefit? When we add to that, also answering how in substantive form, maybe not how, well, we could do this or we could do that, but let's really think through the answer to how we would implement an improvement and what we're actually going to do, and parse that apart and say what we will do and what we won't do. Then do a little bit of bulletproofing. How can we overcome any risks that we see? And lastly, of course, important to have a cost return analysis, at least, backup napkin, at least a fundamental feeling of what it's going to take to implement the idea and what we expect to return from that. Hopefully you can imagine now, as opposed to walking into a resource manager with a concept or an idea and walking in with the answers to all those 5 components, it's a very different conversation, and you're giving them something that they can really make a decision against. Okay, so before I walk through the concept, when to use, when not to use. This is specifically designed to bring a small number of experts into a room and do a physical workshop, or run the same small number or small community of experts through an online exercise, or both. Combine the two together. It works really well when you have an emerging concept that that's not well formed and needs to have more form and structure before you can make decisions on it. It works really well in environments where your problems are complex and where the answers aren't necessarily clear, or everyone has different opinions on what is the right answer. It also works especially well, and I can reflect an experience in particular with working with Procter & Gamble, where everyone knows the practice of innovation. They know the terminology, they know the methods, they know the steps to the process. And so what you have is a perfect storm of experienced people who know the business, have their own expertise and their own perspectives, understand the process that they need to follow to move forward, and just need a little help collaborating and making decisions and driving someone to help facilitate the creativity and the decision making. Once you get this down into a model that works in your organization, it's easily repeatable. So you can get a lot of value out of it. So that's enough of preemptory comments. Let's move right in and walk through the method. And here you see it in 4 steps, as Kim mentioned. Step 1 is to take the incoming idea or ideas and think of this as a 3 to 4 hour workshop, or it could be even a 1-day workshop. You may take multiple ideas and exercise it over multiple days. That's a way to get a lot of value out of repeating the method over and over. Once people are comfortable with it, they get better and better, and you can get a lot more value by working on multiple ideas. But as I mentioned, we backcast, first of all, on the idea and get that deep understanding, so everybody in the room has the same common understanding and perspective of how we're looking at the problem or how we're looking at the opportunity and which parts of it we're going to approach. Then we work on imagining success. And this is live ideation. So this is just working from what we already have as an idea or multiple ideas and extending even further and talking about, okay, if all the boundaries were off and if all the resources were available, what could we do? Then we ensure success by de-risking and validation of our approach, at least among the experts, and we put forth a compelling argument. I guess I would comment that we're not going all the way through the cycle of innovation here. This particular process is designed to bridge between an emerging concept and taking the first step of however your organization works on ideas. It might be a fast prototype. It might be a business model canvas. It might be something more technical where you're doing early stages of, or human design oriented, where you're doing early stages of understanding needs and designing technology-based solutions to those needs. All we're trying to do here is bridge the gap between, wow, that's a really cool idea, and yes, we're going to put resources behind it. So let's break that down. And here I think you'll find some little hints and tactics that could be useful outside this process, but certainly in the process. So how do we do the backcasting? We like the technique of mind mapping on a whiteboard. We take a look at the core insight or the compelling essence of the idea and understand the idea and the surround around it. What's being solved? And how's that related to our company vision? What are we doing today and what's missing? Can we break the problem into dimensions? Do we understand all the players, and do we understand the negative impacts? And hopefully you can see that with that kind of perspective and answering all those questions and everybody looking at the same mind map on a whiteboard, now we have a better perspective and a common understanding that we can move forward from. So then we start working on the desired improvement, and we're going to do a little bit of wishing, a little bit of brainstorming. It's straightforward imagination. What would the ideal solution look like? What would be required to make it work? And then maybe more important than anything, what's in, what's out? So can we make a recommendation to our decision makers that shows that we've thought about what could be done, but also what should be done? So the quick way to do that is either online using Spigit, collect ideas, using a wish format. What is the idea that we think we could do? What is the improvement that it drives? And what is the outcome to the business? And whether you're using sticky notes or whether you're using Spigit, whether it's live or whether it's online, one of the really effective angles here is encourage people to challenge the orthodoxies. Encourage them to get out of the same old way of thinking, and really push their own creative ability and facilitate them to move beyond what have we always done and get beyond those idea killers. The idea killers like, oh, we don't do it that way, or we don't have those kinds of resources, and really take the boundaries off and let them come up with what they think might work. Now we have a sense for what will work. What would be important to use or to have in our abilities are what are the solution components that are required to be able to move forward? Do we need technology? Do we need some kind of governance? Do we need some outside partnerships, some capabilities that we don't have internally? Do we need a better understanding of the whole fiscal impact and a fiscal analysis behind it? And so this is a good list to prompt everyone to think about, all right, we have a sense for what we want to do. What are the pieces that we need in place to be able to accomplish that? And again, think no limits. Don't think about, oh, you know, we're in a downturn, we're in cost controls, we'll never get any resources. So we're still working on what could we do. Now we decide what should we do. And there are a couple ways you can go about this. You could actually run a quick pairwise comparison, A/B comparison in Spigit, and do some criteria scoring if you want to take it to the next level and spend a little bit more time and do little bit more rigorous analysis. Or you can do simple dot voting, put your sticky notes on the whiteboard and give everybody you know, X number of dots and let them collectively vote to decide. Or you can use Spigit 5-star or up-down voting. But the point is here is, where do we draw the line? There's all kinds of things that we would like to do to make this an effective solution. Now we need to make a choice as to where we're drawing the line and what we think absolutely must happen in order to be able to achieve the first viable solution, first level viable solution. All right, so now we've looked backward at the environment surrounding the idea, and we've talked about a way to get to a short list of what we think we should do to capture the opportunity or solve the problem. Let's move now to our second polling question and talk about or hear from the crowd. What barriers do you encounter when you're deciding on solutions? Excellent, and we have our results. It looks like we have a tie between deference to person with authority and lack of disciplined decision making. Definitely tough areas. Probably deference to person with authority is the easier one to overcome. And that's one of the great advantages of this approach that we're talking about today, particularly when you take it online. Maybe even using anonymity. We're not big fans of anonymity. We like the innovation process to be open and transparent so everyone can learn and share from it. But there are very good reasons to be anonymous sometimes. And this is one of them, is so that the ideas are being judged on the merit of the ideas and not on the basis of the person who happened to contribute them. As far as disciplined decision making, we'll see that also in our process. There are a couple of tools that I like in this area. One is called gradients of agreement, and it's a great way to get people to expose how they really feel. And it moves the decision making, helps move the decision making forward when you're locked up. The other thing is just to think about process of decision making. So is there a single person or is the group? Is there a group who are the decision makers? And how are they going to make a decision? Are there specific criteria that they're going to be using? You know, what is that process? And knowing that ahead of time before you get there helps get through some of those barriers. Thank you for that, those results. Interesting, loudest voice dominating does not come up as strong. But let's move ahead and look at step 3 and 4 in our process. All right, step 3. So we think we know what we should do. Now we need to take a little bit of risk analysis. And one effective way of doing this is most of the people, again, take into account this is a live workshop, or even if it's online, the people that you're inviting are really crucial to this process and this method, because they need to have this familiarity with the organization internally and externally. What are the strengths and weaknesses? Where are the opportunities? Where are the threats? When they have that familiarity, they can look at the solution and identify where the most likely risks are going to come from. And then they can do simple brainstorming again on strategies to overcome those risks. You may not solve all of them in your workshop, and that's not the intention here, because we're in the earlier stages of innovation. We just want to make sure that with a group of knowledgeable experts, we've foreseen at least the obvious risks and have an idea of how we're going to overcome them. Why is that important? It's important because we want to go and convince someone to put resources against these ideas. And if we can't explain to them that we've looked ahead at the risks and have an idea of how we're going to overcome them, that's going to lower the confidence of that resource manager to invest. So pretty simple model, but pretty effective too in a small group like this. Another way to ensure success, and there are other criteria that you might think about, but a model that seems to work well across multiple situations is, let's just score on a 1 to 10. Go around the room. How desirable is this solution? It's a 6, it's an 8, it's a 3. Okay, we're averaging out around 4. Does 4 feel about right? Everybody feel like this is a 4? Okay, how feasible is this solution? Oh, it's a 9. Oh, it's a 10. Oh, we could really do this. This isn't too outlandish. Great. Okay, we're a 9 or 10 on feasibility. Viability. Can we implement it successfully? A little skepticism there. I'm hearing 3s and 4s. Okay, so we need to work on viability. It's another form of de-risking, but in a look forward kind of a mindset. So are we talking about something that will be desirable, feasible, and viable? And of course, as we're doing all this, we're documenting on the whiteboard, so it's a shared vision now that everyone can see, and we get to step 4, which now is the compelling argument. This is the one that continues to surprise me every time, and we see this in rapid sessions as well, and that is that once we have this kind of understanding, it's not that difficult now to write a pitch or an opportunity statement. Don't think of it as a 27-page business model. Think of it as a 1 or 2 slide description of our situation. What is the ideal solution? What are we going to need to make it work? How we're going to overcome risks? Our best assessment of chances of success, the 3 to 5 reasons that we think you should invest, and what we need to move forward. And having done this work and spent 3 or 4 hours collaborating together as experts, it's really not that hard to consolidate everything and come up with this kind of an opportunity statement. So when we say pitch here, it's not exhaustive. It doesn't look at all the angles. It doesn't have all the answers. Remember what we're doing. What it does do is it takes a fuzzy concept that I could look at and really have no idea of how to move it forward, and turn it very quickly into an opportunity statement that I can get a pretty good idea of what we're talking about here and what would be the right level of investment and whether I should invest. So that's our method. The last couple of thoughts I wanted to leave you with is, generally this gets practiced in a live workshop. One of the ways that you could approach it if you have more time, and particularly if you want more diversity of input. In other words, you want to involve more people in the process, and you're not going to fly 40 or 50 people in to a central location, or maybe even 100 people. Think about maybe running an online challenge or an online innovation session at each of these steps. And so maybe during week 1, the second week of December, we're going to ask everybody to help us understand the situation around the idea and get a common understanding of what that is. And then in week 2, possibly even working with a different community or audience, we might go and imagine success. So let me give that some substance. In step 1, we might go out and talk to all the multifunctional experts in the organization, someone from marketing, someone from finance, someone from operations, someone from sales, someone from customer support. And let's get all those diverse perspectives of what the situation is that's going on. And then when we go to run our second challenge online, now maybe we go to a different set of people that are particularly good at ideation. And I'm thinking of another consumer products company that I did this with. They had packaging experts, they had finance experts, they had marketing experts, and they were all people that are very familiar with the creative process and the product development process. So when they come into a room and start imagining success, you're going to get some really good ideas. And the point here is you may want to shift communities that you're working with as you run these challenges over time. Same again for de-risking and validation. That requires a different mindset. Imagining success is people who can think openly and expansively about what the possibilities might be. De-risking and validation is all about being critical. Why won't it work? It's kind of an engineering or a financial analysis kind of a mindset where the people that you're engaging are the ones that are going to take a hard look at this and say, all right, well, if it's going to happen, it's going to need to overcome this, this, and this. Good, we need that. Let's document that. Let's understand how we think we can overcome it. And then let's put the judgment up in front of our decision makers. And maybe even use an online challenge to develop the pitch if we want to take it that far, although that's probably less likely in that fourth step. Of course, all these things can be done live or online, or some combination of the two is extremely powerful. Live sessions are typically better for collaboration, and online sessions are typically better for getting individual thought and individual perspective objectively, letting them think in their own way and make judgments in their own way, and then having the ability to aggregate those without the confusion of the online discussion that sometimes can get single-threaded. So it's a little better online at dealing with multi-dimensional kinds of discussions and breaking them down into pieces and let everyone have a say, so that we arrive at a better decision because we're taking into account more perspectives than the people who happen to be talking in the live session. Now, that said, that's not an absolute rule, and there are nuances to each. So we like actually the approach of doing both live and online. Takeaways for you. So what have we talked about? We've talked about a small group session, live or online, to take early ideas that are emerging, especially in complex situations, and leverage our experts to come together and work through a stepwise process to quickly convert something really exciting and interesting into a plan that can be judged as to how and when and if it should be taken forward. What we're doing there is we're trusting our experts, which is good and healthy for the culture of the organization. In our first polling question, I recall that it came back that cultural adversity to taking risk is one of the biggest barriers that you run into. So what we're doing here is we're leveraging the organization leadership trust in their experts to be able to move forward. We're also driving belief, real belief, like on the part of decision makers, emotional and intellectual belief that this concept could be effective and will add value, and that we have a realistic plan and a chance to actually make it happen. So that is the convincing part. That is the turning from, okay, let me see what you've got, to, you know, I'm ready to champion this. I'm ready to be an advocate. I'm ready to put my name behind this idea. I'm ready to spend my resources on this idea, because I think there's real substance here and we can actually accomplish it. A little bit of hygiene around aligning to business strategy, just essential to be able to demonstrate that. And then maybe most effectively, we understand the risks and we know how to overcome them. So I feel good applying money. I feel good applying human resources. I feel good applying other tools that we have in the organization and putting all that to go to work on the idea, because we have some sense of the risks and feel like we can overcome them. Will there be others that we'll need to overcome? Almost certainly. But we've got a stronger starting point here by just having done this work. Great. So Ian, that's what I have to share with the group. If we can go to next slide. Yes, I believe we're at question and answer.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights, Bill. A reminder to the audience, you can enter any questions that you have in the chat box. The first question, though, that has come in would be, can you compare this approach that you shared around concept development to other methods like Lean Startup, Business Model Canvas, or Agile Development?
Great question. And some highly effective practices there. I guess I would say the key point of differentiation is looking at the circumstance and the method that we're using. Something like Lean Startup was really designed for starting up new businesses. And if that's what you're doing, I think would be a tremendous and complementary approach. No reason that couldn't be merged with the approach that I just talked through. Lean Startup Business Model Canvas, also designed for starting new business. Agile development, typically applied to software development. I mentioned design thinking before, and some of those approaches typically designed to new product and service development. But all of them really are different angles on process of innovation, and I think can be complementary. What I would stress about the method that I was proposing for concept development is that it's quick, it leverages expertise, it leverages existing knowledge and capability. And honestly, it's really leveraging the brain power and the intuition and the good judgment of the people who are really have their heads into this work on a daily basis. And we just need to get them together and talk them through that process, and can really bridge that gap between a concept and making a judgment on whether to take the idea forward. Lean Startup Business Model Canvas, they're really going whole cycle. They're really going all the way through that process. So hopefully that helps a little bit of differentiation.
Absolutely. A follow-on question that came in while you were speaking was, do you have any examples of this approach working in healthcare institutions?
Interesting you ask. We did do this workshop with a healthcare organization. This happened to be a pharmaceutical developer, and they were finding that one part of their process was too difficult to engage the parties that they needed to engage. I'm just trying to talk generically about this. And so there's obvious benefit in working with third parties to make it easier to engage. And the corollary would be, you know, if we have customers looking at our products, we want to make it easy for them to understand our products and buy our products. In this case, they wanted to make it easier to engage people in the process of developing pharmaceutical solutions. And as we all know, that's a very highly regulated and complex and difficult process where there are a lot of requirements and stipulations. And so quickly in a workshop, we were able to talk through the outcome, and the idea that in that case took the form of kind of the desired outcome that we wanted to achieve. And so when we backcast against that and figure out the circumstances and what we had to work with, and then talk through what we could do, what we should do, and how we were going to de-risk it, and then how we were going to present it, they were able to come up with a much more substantive opportunity statement to put in front of decision makers that was allowed them to move forward.
Another question that came in was, do you recommend a different team vetting each step, or the same team all the way through step 1 to 5?
You know, that's one of those difficult in situation type questions. It depends on who you've got to work with in your circumstances and what you're working on. So there's no easy answer to that. I guess the best answer is think through that carefully and just decide, knowing your organization and who you've got to work with and what you're working on, what you want to accomplish. And again, the guidance would be, when they are highly expert, when there isn't a lot of cultural malaise going on, when they're already motivated, you know, members of the organization, and they are positively disposed, when they have a lot of knowledge and tools and resources at their disposal, and when there's a sense of urgency to get this done, the business needs to move forward, or you need to drive a competitive advantage quickly, for example, then you have a good circumstance for doing it all in one session. If it's bigger, more complex, if they're less familiar with the process of innovation and creativity and how it works, if they're risk averse, you know, basically the opposite side of the coin, then you may want to slow it down and put it through stages, as long as the business can wait for the answer or wait for you to achieve your result.
Interesting. And a number of other questions have come in that seem to be following this theme of working in risk-averse cultures. So one of the questions that came in was, do you have any strategies to increase organizational humility? So how do you get executives to realize they don't fully understand a problem or the possible solutions, and should therefore reach out to the organization to tap the wisdom of the employees?
Yeah, that's a really difficult one. I guess my best answer would be to just assume that you will find the answer and that you have smart people, and go ahead and work through the problem and develop what you think is your solution, and then find a willing advocate to put it in front of. So if you're familiar in the technology industry, for example, it's referred to as a skunk works or a garage works. I think you want to create little tiny successes that you can then build from and demonstrate progress. And that gets into some of the sort of change management philosophies around you need to be bold and courageous as a change leader, and you need to have air cover. So you need to find an executive advocate who is willing to be bold and courageous with you. But you can do that on a very small opportunity or challenge and show the progress and demonstrate that it works, and then build from there. So I guess I would take that approach. I would take a stepwise approach. Let's have some really small successes. Let's do them in very focused, concentrated ways. And let's build those advocates among our leaders one person at a time. And then all these cool things are going to happen. Like, you're going to take your solution and into, when you help your leader be a hero and be successful, they're going to show off their success among their leadership community. And then everybody's going to want to know, how did you do that? And that's the way I've seen it spread among the leadership, to where you can start to break down those walls of that you're describing. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, and so then another question came in. It's along the same lines, but a little bit of a different slant. So we'll see if you have some additional comments on this as well. In an environment that is autocratic and conservative, how can a younger person try to overcome obstacles set up by more senior, seasoned members of the team who are stuck in their ways?
Yeah, I'm not sure the answer would be any difficult. That's a terrific question. I think that there is an art form to being bold and courageous and being a change agent and being a leader, and that it's very much a human exercise of knowing when and how to push. So in the scenario that you described, for example, to be brash and bold and just charge forward and create all kinds of noise and all kinds of, stir up all kinds of stuff, and everyone's running, screaming with their hair on fire from the room because everybody's talking about these horrible risks and competitive approaches that they're seeing. That's not going to do a lot of good in a conservative environment where people like to understand and move slowly. What you might do, however, is just be really commonsensical and measured and calm and logical and rational and fact-based about your approach, and go out and describe what you think you see happening and collect your evidence for that. It's always better to be fact-based, because it's really hard to argue against something that is very well documented and established. And you take it one step at a time, and you say, well, look, I'm seeing this thing going on out here. Here's the evidence that I have for it. I think it's important to us, and I have an idea or two about how I think we might approach it. I wonder if I could explain it to you, and maybe we could work on what could be some next steps about what we might do about it, and make them a colleague and make them an advocate. And so there's a little bit of playing the game of being deferential to their authority and their experience, but also knowing that you're really driving substantive change. And that probably is the key to the whole thing, regardless of the culture or the human dynamics that are going on, is we care most about the outcome that we're trying to achieve, and we're willing to put ourselves secondary in service of achieving that outcome. And you're really being a leader there, because what's going to happen is other people around you are going to want to be part of that, because they're going to realize that that's an effective way to move ahead. Here's an interesting statistic that I picked up the other day. and I'm not sure if it was from Gallup or one of the others who do the engagement and retention research, the #1 organizational dynamic or behavior that retains good people and makes them want to work there and not look for other jobs is working at a place where change actually is embraced and change actually happens. So, you know, I think that's motivating and encouraging, and no matter what environment you're working in, just keep in mind that when you're driving change, you're working on the most important, and driving improvement, you're working on the most important thing that organization can do, and you're contributing to a healthy organization that that can move forward together in a place that people want to work.
That is great advice, Bill. Really appreciate your thoughtful responses to all of the questions that have come in, and I think we're about out of time today. So we're going to wrap up this webinar. Again, thank you so much to Bill, and thank you to all of our audience who attended today. And keep an eye on Spigit.com for additional webinars and events going forward, and appreciate all of your time. Have a great day.